Okay, so again, this is Andrew Plevin, Transparency Alliance, and I really thank everyone for coming to today's webinar on the Transparency Alliance plan and how it can benefit you. I'm going to start off by giving a little bit of background on Transparency Alliance and who we are and why we are here. And I also want to talk about what we consider the 5 principles of the Transparency Plan, the key ideas behind our plan and its benefits. And I'm going to talk briefly, but I think we should review the risk in the joint plan and how they compare. So let's dig into who we are. As I said, I'm Andrew Plevin. My co-founder and co-CEO is Philip Siller. We started a firm called Broad River Asset Management, and we are specialists in life settlements. And by way of background, Philip and I have worked together for over 15 years now. We both have very strong quantitative backgrounds and very long experience helping advising families and institutions in their investments. For many years prior to our entering life settlements, Philip and I both worked on behalf of very wealthy private families investing in a range of assets. And we started Broad River Asset Management in 2011. We own the firm, and we are dedicated to life settlements. That is our primary business, and we have a staff of 10 who help us. So we have a very large team focused exclusively on this, and we're real specialists in this. We are not affiliated with any bank, insurance company, or other investment firm, and our clients are public and corporate pension plans, endowments, and church benefit plans. And I think we're very proud to say that we have, a sterling history and reputation, and people always say your word is as good as your name, and we really value having a strong reputation, and we are known as being very upright and prudent and careful in what we do. And we're going to bring that, and we hope to bring that to you as part of our Transparency Alliance plan. So why are we here? And again, I know a lot of you have joined in, so I want to give you a little bit about why we're here. But investing in bankruptcies is not our normal business. As I said, we invest in life settlements. That's our business. But we were asked to provide our advice and assistance. And that we were asked back in last summer, in fact, July of 2015, Mr. Moran asked us for our opinion about how much outside financing was needed, what could be available, would be interested. And we spent a number of months over the summer looking at the life partner pool, analyzing it, and trying to better understand it and understand the risk. And I note here a bullet point that we gave to Mr. Moran back in September 2015. The purpose of this proposal is to preserve and enhance the value of the fractional interest in life insurance policies sold by Life Partners Holding, and to provide the fractional interest holders of those policies with alternatives which can best monetize their investment. We also provided in October of last year a report to Mr. Moran, Thompson and Knight, the creditors committee as represented by Mr. Hussain, analyzing the portfolio and providing advice to them on it. The basic analysis that we came up with then are the basic analysis that is embedded in our current Transparency Alliance plan. And we had put in a lot of diligence and a lot of work, and I have to say we were a little disappointed that there was no follow-up or investigation of what we did by the trustee or the committee. And so by beginning in October and through March of this year, we gave them numerous term sheets for offering, and we essentially received a variety of refusals by the trustee to negotiate after November 2016, when the court approved the maturity funds facility. And I think we all know that since then, the trustee has just been relentless in fighting off any alternatives to you as LPI investors. They have fought our plan, they have fought Vita's plan, they have fought other investors who did not go forward to provide a plan in the end. So a lot of people have been very discouraged by the trustee, but we're not. And we're not because we feel we have a better plan. And I have to say, having looked at the trustee's plan from its early days to now, many of the key design faults that we saw in it are still there. And they worry us. And we don't want to see people who, like you, are now in bankruptcy end up back there again. And the key to our plan, there are many keys, but one of the key things we want to ensure is that there's never another bankruptcy of the pool of assets that you've invested in, or the fractional interest. So I'm going to talk about the 5 principles of our plan, and they are the following. First of all, we bring tremendous depth to the management and governance. Best in class is a term that's maybe overused, but we certainly have a team that is among the most, perhaps the most experienced in investing in life settlements. Philip and I have been investing as an institutional asset into life settlements all the way back to 2002. And we have a history of managing and prudently managing assets in this area since 2002 successfully. The other aspect that's quite important in life settlements, and I think you all know this through your personal experience, is that you really need excellent servicing. Life settlements have many servicing needs, both the premiums and for the policies need to be paid and they need to be followed, but also as you as investors deserve very good servicing and reporting and be able to do client follow-up. So we've designed a tremendous way, an excellent way to be able to handle giving you first-class service and support. And finally, we have an outstanding supervisory board, and I'm going to go through their credentials in just a bit. So, management and governance. Next, we built this plan to respect your ownership. We, as much as possible, want to preserve your individual ownership choices. If you want to be a continuing interest holder, continue your fractional interest, we have a very clean approach. If you want to preserve essentially your right to invest through a note, well, we didn't find, and we heard from many of you, that the note that was being offered by the trustee was unappetizing. So we designed a note that is largely is very similar to the note you have now, so that you can still own these through a note. And if you decide to go into the pool, we think we have a better design for the pool as well. So we respect your ownership choice. I mentioned this, and I'm going to mention this again and again, but we're the only solution that provides protection against bankruptcy for these assets for a long time. We provide it for 10 years because that's the length of our plan, but we have in place permanent financing to backstop the pool for 10 years. And the trustee's plan has nothing comparable, and we think that is a big mistake. That leaves people like you exposed, and you shouldn't be. Lower fees. We believe our fees are lower, and we are going to show you that. And we'll show you why our fees are designed the way they are. But we believe our fees are lower, and we can show you that. And finally, I've talked about closure. I don't think anybody invested into Life Partners or bought a fractional interest expecting to be in it for 30 years or more. I know many of you have been in it for many years, 5 years, 10 years, some of you even longer. And now the trustee is proposing a plan that's 30 years. So I don't think any of you expected to make an investment where essentially you're going to pass it on to your grandchildren. And we don't think that makes sense. We think the only people who benefit from that are not you as investors, but people who are servicers and people who are taking fees, and we think that's wrong. So I'm going to talk a little bit more now about our management. So our team, including Philip and I, have over 55 years of combined asset management experience. And we've done that as institutional managers on behalf of a clientele that are among some of the largest pension plans in the United States and in the rest of the world. So we are known as asset managers for life settlements. This is what we do. We don't act as trustees for other assets. We don't act as receivers for other assets. We're not involved in consulting businesses. We are asset managers for life settlements. We do that on behalf of large institutions. And our clients are some of the largest pension plans in the United States, in the UK, and in Australia. So it is a bit of a difference for us to have clients that would be retail clients. But we have, I'm going to come back to this, we specifically set up our servicing to make sure that we can handle all your needs. And I think that's so important. So, as I said, we have a team of 10 dedicated here in our offices that do nothing but life settlements. And they cover all aspects: operations, accounting, reporting, analytics, monitoring, and the investment management decisions about what to do with each policy and what's the best approach. So we have a dedicated team that has been together for many years now, and we are quite adept at managing these assets. Now I want to talk about servicing, because we have brought to our proposal here the same approach that we bring our largest pension plans. And that approach is premised on that there are checks and balances. The institutional world does not concentrate servicing in one firm's hands. That's gone. Those days are long over. I think we all know the story of Bernie Madoff, but it happened before that. That institutional investors don't have their operations servicing, they don't have their custodial servicing, they don't have their investor client servicing all in one hand, because it's too easy to make mistakes or for things to really go wrong. So our system is built on checks and balances and breaking up those functions so they are discrete and that each party can supervise and check each other with transparency lines to Broad River teams supervising them and making sure it's all right. And that's very different than what the trustee says about Vito, which is everything in one basket. So we thought long and hard about what's the best way to service individual investors. As I said, our clients are pension plans. We're not used to handling 22 or 23,000 individual investors. Neither is the trustee, and certainly neither is Vito. So we went out and found a firm. We went out through a request for proposal. We solicited proposals, and we talked to a lot of people and evaluated them. And we wanted people who were used to handling mutual fund statements, people who could put together statements, handle calls, handle emails, and deal with tens of thousands of investors. And we selected Archway Finance and Operations. They're based in Oklahoma. They're an excellent firm. They're an independent fund administrator, and they handle more than $26 billion in assets under management on behalf of people just like you. They handle client servicing, phone calls, emails, cash management, distributing, and reporting. And so when you receive an invoice for premium payments, it's going to come from Archway. When you receive a check from a maturity or from the pool, it's going to come from Archway. Next, we have a firm called TVPX Life Settlement Solutions. TVPX is a firm whose team is probably the most experienced team as a custodian of life settlements. What does a custodian do? Custodian, as the name implies, is somebody who holds the asset on behalf of the owner. Right? So TVPX will own the life settlements on behalf of you as an owner, whether that's in the pool or whether that's going alone. And they are probably the most deeply experienced team in the industry in handling custodial work for life settlements. And they're based in Utah, and they are great, and they're going to interface with the insurance carrier. So that's their role. Finally, we have another servicer, sort of the third leg of the stool, if you will, and that's MLF LexServe. MLF LexServe will do our death tracking and policy administration, meaning they'll just follow up when we receive notices from the carriers and make sure we are aware of them. And they are the largest independent portfolio servicer in the secondary insurance market by an order of magnitude. So we've picked large, reputable institutional servicers who provide each service discreetly, who are used to doing this, and they're really the best in this class. And again, I think, sorry, just to go back, it's so different than the VITA model, which is everything's in VITA, there's really no checks and balances, and that model, that may work for retail in terms of servicing, but it's certainly not prudent, it's certainly not careful, and we don't think it's really what you deserve. Now, we have a supervisory board too. Our supervisory board is led by 4 people who are extremely experienced in the asset. And I'm just going to quickly go through their names and their... So Eleanor Kitzman will be the chair. And she is the former insurance commissioner of South Carolina. She was also the interim Texas insurance commissioner. She's also run insurance companies. So she really knows insurance and life insurance, and she knows the regulations, and she certainly is a very careful and prudent person. And she's going to be the chair. Next, we asked Bettina White to join us. Bettina White is a nationally recognized Texas-based restructuring and corporate governance consultant. She is really a guru, if you will, in restructuring and corporate governance and best practice, and we're really honored to have her. Rob Voller is the former president and CEO of Hershey Trust, and it's the same company that makes the Hershey chocolates. So the Hershey Trust is both a charity, a very large charity, and they own and manage the chocolate company we all know. And he has tremendous experience in corporate governance and running a trust on behalf of people, because Hershey Trust is really a trust. It's a charitable trust, but the same principles of being a oversight for a trust apply, and he has great experience. And then we have Phil Loy. Phil Loy is the founder of one of the leading life expectancy firms called AVS, and he has probably unparalleled experience in understanding actuarial risk with respect to life settlements and life settlement underwriting, life expectancy. So he's great. And finally, we're going to have a 5th person, an investor representative, to be named by you. And I should say, our board is going to supervise us, and they have full power to terminate us if we don't do a good job for you. That's what you should expect, and that's what we've structured. So I'm going to go on now and talk a little bit about respecting your ownership, because I think this is quite important. And I'm going to go into a little more detail. So first, we give back all money that on all policies that are matured. We pay 100% of all what's called post-petition maturity benefits on day 1. As of last estimate provided by the trustee, that's about $156 million. I would note and compare the joint plan uses this money to help support the pool, what's called the PHT, the Position Holder Trust, and the joint plan does not specify how much, when, or to whom. Now, I have heard sometimes they'll say, oh, we intend to pay it out, or we plan to pay it out, or we'll pay 95%, but they do not put it in writing. So it's one of these nice promises, but it's only a promise with the trustees plan. Now, if you want to be a fractional interest holder, our plan lets you keep 100%, and you pay your premiums and you get 100% of the death benefit at maturity. The joint plan, first of all, doesn't let you keep 100%. It takes 5%, so you only have 95%. And it's not well known, but the joint plan, the trustees plan, lets the trustee borrow from you and from your maturities whenever they wish. So if premiums are running too low or they need money for other expenses, they can, without any further request or any permission by you, simply hold it as long as they want. And again, we don't think that's right. We don't think that's respecting your ownership. And we don't think that people who are going it alone, who want to be fractional interest holders, really signed up to being lenders of last resort. Also in our plan, you can join the pool at any time for half the joint plan's price. And if you decide to go it alone to be a continuing interest holder, you don't have to participate in the final sale. We've set up special provisions to ensure that if you want to go it alone, you can do so. So we've talked about 5 principles. We've talked about 2 now, our management and respecting ownership. Let's go on to another important point, protection against bankruptcy. So, sorry, that did not come up. Let's try that again. Okay. I think the key thing about protection of bankruptcy is that it really depends for returns and about this risk, about how many maturities come in and when. So how much you get and the risk here is really how fast maturities come in. I think we all get that. I don't think it's controversial. Tom Moran, Dennis Racine doesn't control what the good Lord does or what Mother Nature does in terms of maturities, and nor do we. So it's kind of silly to say one plan gives more than the other, because it's really out of everyone's hands. It's only in Mother Nature's hands. So what does that really mean? If maturities are beyond anyone's control, and if the maturities are too low, the pool, the position holder trust, is going to need more money. I mean, we all get that, right? The only money that really supports the pool is how much comes in from maturities. And I think even if you're thinking about being a continuing interest holder, you have to be worried about the pool, because what we've learned in the bankruptcy, and I think what everyone knew intuitively, was that if you're a fractional interest holder, you can only stay a fractional interest holder and pay just your premiums if everybody else pays their premiums. So even if under the plan you choose, you choose to go it alone, you still need the pool to be healthy. Because if the pool's not healthy, then your fractional interest could fail too. So let's talk about how much money's coming in and how much more it will need. And I'm switching now to a projection of our forecast of the 10-year life settlement maturities. And this is the cumulative amount of maturities over 10 years. And I have to say there's actually a mistake here in the footer here. This is not just for the pool, this is actually the cumulative life settlement maturities we see entirely for all positions. And this is based on 3,000 simulations we did. So we project 1.35 billion, and we project that as the average amount over 10 years. And I think everyone can see, and I'm going to highlight this here, that there's a graph, right? We see this graph here. And what we see is that the graph is very low at the left end. It's 1.1. And then the numbers go up, up, up. And the peak likelihood frequency is around this 1.35, and then it goes down, down. And so what it's saying is that we see almost no forecast that will show less than 1.1. That's why the graph starts here. We also see no forecast that's going to show maturities greater than just about 1.5 billion. Right? So that's our opinion based on all our analysis and judgment and experience. And here's the trustees, 1.61 billion, big difference. And you can see that we don't even show this is on our charts. This number is off our charts. There is not a single simulation we have that matches the trustees' projection. There's almost 300 million difference over 10 years between these. So you might say, well, that's our projection, the trustees' projection. How do I know who's right? Well, we have a bit of information already. So let's fees. We said there's 5 things. Here are fees. I want to talk first about if you choose the continuing interest holder option. Right? In our plan, there's essentially 2 choices. Right? You can become part of the plan, and you can become part of the continuing interest holder. So, in what we see here is that I'll start with the red line. The red line is the trustee's plan. You pay a flat number. You pay a flat number whenever that person dies. So if a person died the day after the plan, you'd pay 7.66% of your fractional interest to the trustee. And if they die 2 years later, you pay the same, and so on. Here's the transparency fee. It starts out below 2%, and it goes up. And in the early years, you're paying your share, and that's this kind of kink in the curve for helping to pay back your share of the bankruptcy cost. And then you see there's a kink here, and then it goes like this. Right? Does everyone see that? So there is no time over 10 years, which is length of our plan, in which if you choose the continuing interest holder, your fees in aggregate are going to be higher. So we talked about lower fees, and I think this is a really good example of those lower fees. So I also want to talk about the fees for the position holder trust. And I'm just going to jump in my slide deck. So if you give me 1 second, I'm just going to find that slide. So I appreciate if you give me 1 second. I think this is the right one. So let me see if I get that right. Okay. So here are our fees for the position holder trust. If you choose to go into the position holder trust, there's 2 basic fees. There's the servicing fee and there's the financing fee. And I'm sorry about this chart. It breaks every rule of PowerPoint presentation. Too busy, too many lines, too many colors. And I almost have to apologize, but there's a lot of information and we're trying to get things there to be informative. So the bottom line is that in our plan, you're paying fees for 10 years. And those add up to 31 million. And in the Vita trustee plan for servicing, you are paying for 30 years. And that's almost $67 million. And these are based on our differences in our views of mortality, the amount of maturities, because we just have different views. And then separately, there's a financing fee. And our financing fee is higher. Right? We acknowledge that. Our financing fee is higher. It's almost 43.5 million. It's 43.5 million. And Vita's is 4.2. But I would tell you the following. When you choose a plan, you don't get to choose your fees a la carte. You only get to pay all the fees for the choice you make. So in the end, it's all about aggregate fees, and our aggregate fees are about 20 million less than the trustees. Now I'm going to say a point about the trustees' fee, Mr. Moran's fee. Mr. Moran has asked for a very big fee in his proposal. We calculate it's about 23 million. He has the creditors committee and Thompson and Knight have agreed that Mr. Moran will get 16 million of abandoned interest and 0.5% of all maturities in the pool. We calculate that over 10 years to be about 23 million. So far he's billed about 1 million. That's what he's invoiced the court. And we don't know what the number will be. It's going to be determined by the court. But we do know that Thompson and Knight and Munchart and the creditors committee have agreed to this fee. So they're not in opposition. They're going to support this in front of the court. And in our view, this is a ridiculous fee to pay a trustee for a year and a half's worth of work. We've never heard of such a fee. So we are opposing it, and we're going to negotiate. If our plan prevails, we're going to negotiate very hard. And we don't know if we're going to get down to 1 million. In the end, Judge Nelms is going to determine, but we think it's very likely it's not going to be the 23 million, because after all, Mr. Moran's plan, if we succeed, won't be the one that wins. And so it's very hard to justify $23 million for a plan that doesn't win. That's a success fee. That is not a conventional trustee fee. So going back, we've now kind of talked about 4 points of our plan, and we've covered lower fees. So now I'm going to jump back to the presentation a bit, and I may get the position wrong, so just bear with me a moment. Okay, not that one. And closure. Okay, the 5th point is closure. I've talked about it a bit, but I want to discuss it again. I want to give you a little bit more of our reasoning so you get a feel for it. In our plan, we intend to sell all the policies after 10 years. It may take up to 12 because if the market conditions are bad, we're not going to sell in a bad market. We're going to wait till the market comes back. And we are going to make sure that we do this in the best way. We may, many large policies are sold by leading investment banks because they work with lots of clients, and that's often way some. We may use that. We may just be able to get it done in a very appropriate bid, but we're going to want to make sure we get you the best price possible. So we're going to get multiple bids, and if poor market conditions exist, we will postpone for 1 or 2 years. And why do we do that? Because we feel that's the best way to deliver value. So fees stop after 10 years in our plan. We don't take more fees, and we don't take any fees for selling the pool. And you might say, well, that's a lot of work. You probably deserve a fee for selling the pool, but we felt that as trustee, it's our responsibility to do best, and we didn't want to be accused of selling the pool just to earn a fee. So we explicitly said we're not going to take any fees from the sale. So all the money, and we project it's going to be a lot of money, maybe as much as about $157 million from the sale of the pool, will go to you and to everybody who goes into the pool. So we don't take any fees. It all goes to you. It goes into the pool. And the continuing interest holders who want to stay independent can do so. So I'm going to talk just a moment about sort of points about the joint plan that I think, I think deserve a little more scrutiny. And what kind of things bother me that I think I see going on. So there's a lot of wiggle room in the trustee plan, and that's not the way it should be, because after all, we're going through this entire bankruptcy process in order to set the ground rules. So there shouldn't be just huge amounts of wiggle room. If there's things that they want to say or do, then they should spell it out. But there's a lot of wiggle room. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of those points right now. And I'm going to show you here. So on maturity proceeds, we say, and our plan provides for 100% of payment of all maturities. I know a lot of people have maturities, and they're sitting in the hands of the trustee and the escrow accounts. We don't think it's necessary for the trustee to keep any of those. So we, in our plan, provide for 100% of it. Now, the trustee has all kinds of wiggle room. They say they're going to pay 95%. Sometimes, I've heard them say that. Other times they'll say as soon as possible. They also have a provision, which is right there in black and white in their plan, that your maturity proceeds can be held back. They can be held back completely at their discretion to support the pool. They can be held back as the effective date, and they can decide to hold back afterwards. So if you have a maturity later, after the whole thing comes out of the reorg, they can just decide to keep your money for as long as they wish. You have no recourse there. Okay, CIHs, continuing interest holders. We respect your ownership. We don't take a confiscatory 5%. We give you 100% of death benefits when they happen. And the trustee takes 5%. We talked about that. And your death benefit may be used to support the position holder trust. Now, we've talked about this risk of bankruptcy. And again, if our view is right, and we think the numbers are showing they are, then there's a real risk that over 10 years, there will be times when the pool will be intermittently insolvent, when the amount of money in premium reserves isn't adequate. So we're worried about that. And as trustees, our job is to worry about these risks. That's why you have a trustee, to worry about these things. It's easy to be a trustee if everything goes right. The hard job is making sure what happens if things don't go right. So we believe the time to put in the protection is now. After all, you don't go looking to take out a loan when you're in the middle of a bankruptcy. And banks aren't in the business of trying to do that. That's a terrible time. And why take the risk at all? Better to avoid the risk entirely. So we provide $75 million over 10 years as a backstop. And let's look at what the trustee says. They say there's a lot of money, but really when you look at it, there's not so much as you think. There's $55 million for 2 years to pay exit financing. That's the cleanup of the bankruptcy cost, right? That's the cleanup cost. But that money's gone. Then there's $25 million as a 3-year financing facility. That's nice. That's good. I mean, I applaud them for providing, but it's not enough, because what about years 4 through 30? There's no financing. There's no external financing. So what do they need to do? Well, they can use existing maturities. They may use future CIS maturities. They may get bank financing. But why take all these ifs? Why go into a reorganization which has been so costly and so painful to then be dependent on a bunch of ifs? Shouldn't the trustee have his act in order now? Let's worry about those ifs now. Let's have the contingencies in place now. So if it does happen, we're protected. That's what our plan provides. Then servicing. Right? We have 3 separate nationally recognized leaders in their fields. We have checks and balances. They have one servicer handling the assets, the money, and reporting. And VITA also says they may subcontract to unidentified servicers. Our servicers do not have the right to subcontract. So VITA says, oh, we can bring in people, but we don't know who they are. They're not vetted. And we don't know that Tom Moran may not be involved. I mean, they haven't said he's not going to be. We have no idea if there's a backroom deal. They haven't told us. And one thing's for sure. VITA may be a fine servicer for their existing client base. However, their existing client base doesn't have 23,000 individual retail investors, Neither does ours, right? It is a huge leap for an organization to now handle 23,000 individual investors. Think about all the phone calls, all the emails, all the questions, and all the statements that have to be done and done right. So you don't just say, oh, we're just going to grow it. You can't do that because you have to be ready day one. So we recognized that challenge, and that's why we went to Archway. And apparently Vita hasn't recognized that challenge, and they just think they can do it. We don't understand how, but we think it's not right that they have wiggle room when, again, why should they have wiggle room? Say it now. So, and then I'm respectful of everyone's time, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. We ask that you vote no for the trustee and yes for our plan. We think our plan provides the key 5 principles: better management, respecting your ownership, protection against bankruptcy, lower fees, and closure. And I really ask you to make a clear preference or choice. And I know many of you have got ballots and they're confusing. We're happy to answer ballot questions. But the judge also wants you to make a choice. Judge Nelms has spoken about what he wants. He would like the creditors to make a clear choice. If you have a preference, he is asking you to express that. You can do it either by voting no for one and yes for the other, or if you have voted for both. Judge Nelms is asking you to state a preference even if you have, and that's why all of you have, in the past week or so, received a mailing from the balloting agent court asking you to state a preference. So even if you vote yes for both, Judge Nelms wants to know what your preference is. So we again ask that you state a clear preference. And so I know we've been on for about 45 minutes. It's great. I really thank everyone for their time. And I'm going to now open it up to questions. And let's see. I know my team has been answering questions as we go. So I'm going to just now start to look at the questions that haven't been answered. So just give me 1 minute, please, while I move. Okay, so I know my team has been answering questions as we go along. I'm going to read a question from Randy, because I think this is a question that is probably common, or many of you are thinking about. And Randy asked, I have one policy that has matured and money is being held. If I elect option 3, rescission election, for the other policies, what election do I choose for this policy? Okay, Randy, for that, we recommend that you select the continuing interest holder election. And so I'm going to make this a little more general. If anyone has a policy that has matured and you're waiting on, and you would like to get that money, and who wouldn't, right? And you want to get that money under our plan, then you should select the continuing interest holder election. I should say that regardless of which option you choose, before I go on, that assumes you're a cash investor. If you have a maturity and you are an IRA investor currently, then what you should select is the B3 note option, which is, I think, option 3 on the ballot. So if you have a maturity, again, if you're a cash investor, then you choose the continuing interest holder. That's option 1. if you're an IRA holder and you have a maturity, then you should choose the B3 note. That is option 3 on the ballot. So thank you. Thanks, Randy, for that one. Okay. Mary writes, and I think it's a general question, I would like a clearer explanation on the exit financing for the pool. Okay, so the exit financing in our plan in the pool works as follows. We provide all the money that is required to clean up the entire bankruptcy cost. And we also repay the DIP, and we repay, for example, all the maturity funds facility. And we also fund the premium reserve. And then I think maybe the question is, what are our fees? Mary, I'm going to interpret your question a little bit. What are the fees? So our fees are twofold for the pool. We charge 30 basis points a year to the pool for all our servicing. So that includes everything we do as Transparency Alliance and Broad River, and everything all our servicers to do. So Archway, TVPX, and MLF LexServe are all paid in those 30 basis points. Now, you don't have to pay that out of your own pocket. If you choose the pool, under our plan, you actually write a check for 0. That's the nice thing about the pool. You actually don't have to write a single check. So choosing the pool doesn't pay anything. We also have a separate fee, which is the financing fee. This fee for providing the exit financing and providing the backstop for $75 million. So there's a lot of money required to just clean up the bankruptcy cost. And the way our plan works is that the bankruptcy cleanup costs are shared equally by the pool, by the people who go in the pool, and the people who go it alone. And we think that's right? It should be fairly split among people, but regardless of whether they go in the pool or whether they go alone, or they choose the B3 note. Everybody who's involved in this bankruptcy should bear their proportionate interest. So that's how that's paid back. In return for providing the $75 million in backstop financing, we take 5% of maturities over the 10 years. So that amount, I'll go back to that chart. It may be helpful. Let me try and find that one, if you will. That amount is here, this $43.5 million. So that's the amount that we charge as our servicing fee. And as I pointed out, it is a lot more than the trustees' financing fee, but that's not the total fees. And I think when you look at total fees, our fees are lower. So, Mary, I hope that answered your question there. Now I'm going to continue on to questions. Okay. I see that my team has gotten back to pretty much everyone. Oh, I see a bunch more questions coming in. Great, thank you. I'm going to check these latest ones. Okay. Some of these are very specific to people about their ballot, about whether they received it. I'm looking for another one. If you don't mind, everyone, I'm going to go on mute for one more minute as I search for new questions. I think you guys have been great, and you've sent in a lot of questions, and my team has really answered, I think, nearly everyone, but I want to make sure I get to everybody. So I'm just going to go on mute and check. Thank you. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm just touching back in, and I want to just point out a couple of information sources. So one of the most important are this call number here, 888-365-3611. It is a toll-free number where you can get any of your questions answered. And the other thing is, you please look at our website, transparencyalliance.net. It has an investor forum, so you can see a lot of back and forth with a lot of discussion about our plan and the transparency approach and the trustees approach. So please take a look. And there's a great frequently asked questions section. So I know people have really been posting there, and we've been posting responses there. So please check there. And at this point, it looks like we've answered pretty much all the questions that people have answered, but I'm going to leave the forum open. So if you have questions, feel free to write, and we're going to stay on for another 10 minutes answering any written questions. So thanks so much. And I just want to say one other important date. Please remember to mail in your ballots. The balloting deadline is 11:59 p.m. on August 23rd. That's Pacific time, 11:59. And the court has said that you must receive your ballot by then. So I would really ask everyone to send in their ballots a few days before, to be careful, to be prudent. And please check your preferences, and I really do hope you not only vote no for the trustee, vote yes for transparency, but hey, if you did vote for both, maybe you saw the trustees plan before ours and you heard it, but now you hear ours and like it, that's okay. You can vote yes for both, and just please send in your preference. So if you did vote for both, but you now like our plan more, check the box where it says your preference is for our plan. So thanks again, and I really appreciate it, and we're happy to answer more questions. We'll be standing right by. Thank you.